Just hours remain before the 2026 World Cup officially kicks off. This is expected to be the largest tournament in football history. 48 national teams, 3 host nations, billions of viewers around the world. But just before what should have been FIFA's biggest celebration, a different reality is emerging. In Mexico City, protests are taking place near Azteca Stadium. In the United States, attorneys general have launched investigations into FIFA's ticket sales policies. Meanwhile, many fans, referees, and football officials are still facing difficulties with entry procedures. This is not a single crisis. It is multiple pressures converging at the same time. What makes this especially noteworthy is that most of these issues did not appear overnight. They developed gradually over years of preparation for the tournament. So what is really happening behind the scenes of the 2026 World Cup? If you are interested in balanced analysis and the lesser-known stories surrounding this tournament, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Because what is happening right now could shape the way the world views the 2026 World Cup for many years to come. To understand why the pressure is rising so quickly, we first need to look back at what FIFA promised the world. The 2026 World Cup was not presented as an ordinary World Cup. It was presented as a historic turning point. For the first time, the tournament expanded to 48 teams. For the first time, there would be 104 matches. For the first time, 3 countries would jointly host a World Cup. FIFA called it the most global tournament ever organized, an event capable of reaching approximately 6 billion people around the world. A tournament expected to generate around $30 billion in economic value. An unprecedented scale, unprecedented revenue, and unprecedented global exposure. For years, FIFA repeatedly emphasized one message. The 2026 World Cup is not just about football. It is about connection. It is about inclusion. It is about creating opportunities for more countries, more cultures, and more fans to participate than ever before. That was the vision FIFA sold to the world. But every major promise comes with major expectations. And as opening day approaches, more and more people are beginning to ask questions. Does reality truly reflect what was promised? Or is the gap between the vision and the reality becoming larger than FIFA ever anticipated? If there is one place that best reflects the pressures surrounding the 2026 World Cup, it is Mexico City. Just days before the opening match at Azteca Stadium, thousands of teachers took to the streets in protest. Major roads were blocked. Security forces were deployed. Images of clashes between protesters and police quickly appeared across international media. This is not the beginning FIFA hoped for ahead of the largest World Cup in history. But what is notable is that the protesters are not protesting football. They are protesting issues that have existed for years: wages, pension, living conditions, grievances they believe have not been adequately addressed. The World Cup simply became the perfect moment to attract global attention. Because when millions of people are watching Mexico City, every message has a chance to be heard. That is why many observers argue this is not a crisis created by the World Cup. These are long-standing social issues that are now appearing under the spotlight of a global event. However, for FIFA, the final outcome is much the same. The world is not only seeing a stadium preparing for an opening ceremony. The world is also seeing blocked streets and demonstrations taking place just outside. And that raises an important question. If the World Cup is built as a celebration of global unity, why are the first images of the tournament ones of frustration rather than celebration? And this is only the beginning. Because behind the protests on the streets lies an even larger debate about who truly benefits from the 2026 World Cup. But the teachers' protests are only the most visible part of the story. Right next to Azteca Stadium, another debate has been unfolding for years, more quietly, more persistently, and perhaps even more difficult to resolve. In Santa Ursula Copa, the neighborhood surrounding the stadium, many local residents argue that the World Cup brings more than just opportunities, it also brings costs. As preparations for the tournament accelerated, infrastructure upgrades and urban redevelopment projects moved forward at a rapid pace. For organizers, these investments are necessary. For some residents, they are a source of concern. Concern about rising housing prices. Concern about increasing living costs. Concern that their community will gradually be transformed to serve visitors rather than the people who have lived there for generations. That is why some local groups have adopted slogans such as FIFA Go Home or World Cup of Displacement. Whether people agree with those messages or not, they highlight an important reality. Not everyone experiences the World Cup in the same way. For fans, it is a football celebration. For businesses, it is an economic opportunity. But for some local communities, the World Cup is also a question of who benefits and who must adapt to changes they never chose. And when those questions emerge just outside the tournament's most iconic stadium, the pressure on FIFA begins to extend far beyond football. Because the next issue is no longer on the streets of Mexico. It involves something that has always triggered the strongest reactions from fans: money. If the protests in Mexico are creating pressure on the streets, the debate over ticket prices is creating direct pressure on FIFA's image. Because in the end, the World Cup still depends on the fans. And more fans are asking the same question. Is the World Cup still truly for them? Earlier this year, FIFA President Gianni Infantino declared that every match of the 2026 World Cup had sold out. It was a powerful message. It suggested enormous demand. It suggested success, at least in theory. But not long afterward, journalists discovered that thousands of tickets were still available through FIFA's own ticketing system. The gap between the statement and the reality began attracting attention. At the same time, another issue emerged: ticket prices. For many matches, prices have risen significantly compared with previous World Cups. Some final match ticket categories were listed at tens of thousands of dollars. Even President Donald Trump once said that he would not pay approximately $1,000 for a seat in the upper section of the United States opening match. It was a no-table comment, not because of politics, but because it reflected a feeling shared by many fans. The World Cup has long been seen as the people's tournament, a place where ordinary supporters could save for years just to experience being in the stands once. But as the cost of attending continues to rise, the question begins to change. The issue is no longer who wants to attend the World Cup. The issue is who can still afford to attend the World Cup. And that is when the debate shifts from football to accessibility, a subject that is far more sensitive for FIFA. Part 6: The market is sending signals. FIFA insists that demand for the 2026 World Cup remains extremely strong. But the market is sending different signals. In recent weeks, resale ticket prices have fallen significantly for many matches. Some tickets that were once sold at very high prices have now dropped by hundreds of dollars. And it is not just tickets. Many hotels in host cities across the United States have also reported lower booking levels than expected. This does not mean the World Cup will fail. The stadiums could still be full. Global viewership could still set new records. But these signals suggest that expectations and reality may not be perfectly aligned. And that is what has led many people to start asking questions. Is the 2026 World Cup truly as accessible as FIFA promised? Because for many fans, the biggest issue is no longer the ticket price. The bigger issue is whether they can actually make it to the tournament at all. If ticket prices are a financial barrier, accessibility is becoming an entirely different barrier. Because having a ticket does not necessarily mean you can attend the World Cup. Over the past months, several cases have highlighted this issue. A referee from Somalia was reportedly denied entry, despite having the required documentation. Some members of the Iranian national team encountered difficulties during the visa application process. Many fans from different countries have also faced complex and lengthy entry procedures. This creates a notable paradox. FIFA has promoted the 2026 World Cup as the most inclusive tournament in history. Yet for many people, the path to attending the tournament has become more difficult. And the issue goes beyond paperwork. This World Cup is spread across 3 countries and 16 cities. The travel distances are enormous. The transportation costs are substantial. And entry requirements vary from one country to another. As a result, the fan experience becomes far more complicated than at previous World Cups. The question is no longer who can buy a ticket. The question is, who can actually make it into the stands? And when access begins to feel more like a privilege than an opportunity, FIFA faces a difficult question. Can this still be called a World Cup for everyone, as it was promised to be? Perhaps no example better reflects the complexity of the 2026 World Cup than the case of Iran. According to multiple reports, the Iranian national team has arranged to stay in Mexico rather than the United States. Players are expected to cross the border on match days and return afterward. At the same time, some members of the coaching staff and administrative team have reportedly faced difficulties during the visa application process. This is no longer simply a story about logistics. It is a story about geopolitics. The World Cup has long been viewed as a place where football can rise above differences in culture, religion, and politics. But the reality is that the 2026 tournament is taking place in a world that is becoming increasingly polarized. Diplomatique tension, immigration policies, national security concerns. All of these factors can directly affect the experience of teams and fans. And that is FIFA's greatest challenge. Because when politics begins to influence who can participate in the World Cup, the question is no longer how to organize a successful tournament. The question becomes how to uphold the promise of a truly global competition. In response to the growing controversies, FIFA has repeatedly emphasized one point. The organization does not control the immigration policies of the host countries. And that is true. But for many fans, the issue is not legal responsibility. It is the promise. FIFA described the 2026 World Cup as the most inclusive tournament in history. A World Cup for everyone. Yet when fans struggle to obtain visas, when football officials cannot enter the host country, when national teams are forced to alter their plans because of political factors, the gap between the promise and the reality becomes increasingly visible. This is the greatest pressure FIFA is facing. Not revenue, not television audiences, but trust. Because once fans begin to question access to the World Cup, the debate will no longer revolve around football. It will revolve around how FIFA is managing the biggest tournament on the planet. Part 10. This tournament was supposed to unite the world. The 2026 World Cup was built around a very powerful idea. 3 countries, 3 cultures, 1 tournament for the entire world. FIFA promised that this would be the most inclusive World Cup in history. But as opening day approaches, a question is beginning to emerge. If the World Cup is meant for everyone, why do so many people feel that it is harder to access than ever before? Ticket prices, travel distances, visas, borders. These barriers are becoming part of the story before a single ball has even been kicked. Of course, the 2026 World Cup can still be a success. The stadiums will still be filled with emotion. Historic moments will still be created. But success is not measured only by revenue or television audiences. It is also measured by the feeling the tournament leaves behind. The feeling that the World Cup still belongs to the fans. And that may be the biggest question before the tournament begins. Is FIFA bringing the world closer together? Or is it unintentionally making the distance between people even greater? Of course, it would be a mistake to view the 2026 World Cup only through the lens of the current controversies, because history shows that the World Cup has always had the ability to overcome crises. South Africa faced concerns about security. Brazil faced protests in the streets. Qatar faced years of debate over human rights. Yet once the tournament began, football still became the center of attention. The 2026 World Cup could unfold in a similar way. Canada brings stability. Mexico brings football passion. And the United States brings a scale that very few countries can match. The stadiums may still be packed with fans. Historic moments may still be created. That is also why the current debates matter so much. Because no one wants the World Cup to fail. What many people are debating is not football itself. It is the way football is being organized. And that is exactly what brings us to the final question. The 2026 World Cup may well be a success. The stadiums may be full. Revenue may reach record levels. And the football itself may still produce moments that capture the attention of the entire world. But years from now, people may not remember the revenue figures. They will remember how the tournament made them feel. Because the World Cup is not just a sporting event, it is the dream of billions of fans. And that is why the debates over ticket prices, visas, and accessibility matter so much. So when the final whistle blows next July, what will the 2026 World Cup be remembered for? The biggest World Cup in history? Or the World Cup that made people question who was truly able to take part? What do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy in-depth analysis of the 2026 World Cup, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and join us for more coverage throughout the tournament.